Before viewing our Seaside Chat video, ask yourself these questions. What? What envelops you like love? What transforms the way you see the world? What enables you to handle complexity? What helps you live life on a grander scale? Now, how can you escape the competition, not just run to better them? How can you inspire people and set positive change in motion? How can you see what others can't see and use it to create value? How can you claim untapped personal power and agency to enrich life? The answer? Future competencies. We call them future competencies because they are currently underdeveloped or misapplied today, and they are essential to shaping the future. They also happen to be the competencies that the greats, the great leaders, artists, and scientists of the past and present, who have always employed them to make standout contributions to the world. In other words, these competencies are timeless. So what are the future competencies? We have given a lot of thought to this question and found out that there are 4 important competencies that are foundational to the many skills and abilities we need to continually upgrade to succeed in the ever unpredictable future. They are creative innovation, storytelling, zoom out and zoom in, and potential development. We hope you enjoy our Seaside Chat video to explore these timeless competencies of the future.
So here we are at our Seaside Chats again, and today we're talking about competencies that are for the future, because right now our competencies that are driving many of our businesses and our careers are not the ones that are necessarily going to be useful or as powerful for us in the future.
Right.
And so this is our time to think that, because what got us here, as they say, won't get us there. We have to develop new competencies, and the competencies we're seeing that are so important in business and organizations and so forth is human competencies. The being more fully human and developing ourselves in ways that balance the input from technology with AI and all the other stuff that's coming our way. How do we still stay more fully human? And so that's what's missing in our piece. There's a quote from Michelangelo. One of the big things I think is missing, he nailed, a long time ago, obviously. The greater danger for most of us lies not in setting our aim too high and falling short, but in setting our aim too low and achieving the mark. So are we really seeing our greater potential that's asking us that? And and so I think this is an important part of what this is all about, is seeing something greater in ourselves than we've seen. And I think this is what we see in people, and we see this in organizations, that they're not actually shooting high enough.
Right.
For the full potential.
Yeah, I think there's a lack of boldness and audacity, because we're seeing a lot of a sea of replication happening in a lot of our communications. I can't tell you how many websites I go to where innovation is at the core of our business. Well, everybody has innovation at the core of your business, and so innovation for what? Or we're data driven. Okay, data is important, but driven to what, right? And there's a lot of fear, I think, with like AI and being like, okay, well, what skill sets do I need to handle the future? I think, what got us here is not what is going to get us there. And I think really looking at it, what are the competencies I need as opposed to the skill sets, and then being more boldly human and really standing out with our emotions and our soul as companies, as individuals, what matters to us, and the vulnerability and the strengths that come with that boldness. And
we have to claim our potential. We have to claim our sovereignty of creativity, that we can claim our ability to add to life in a new way. And actually the technology enables us to do that if we rise to the occasion, and we don't say, oh, well, it's going to take over and it's going to take all my jobs and it's going to do all that stuff. Well, it will if that's what we say it's going to do. But if we really take a look at ourselves and see what is in the human potential, and I think it's way underserved, way underutilized in our world today. And so
I completely agree on that.
and one of the keys to that is always the more beautiful answer who asks the more beautiful question. That's a quote from E. E. Cummings. The beautiful question. And when talk about AI, when Sam Altman, who was the guy that started ChatGPT and a lot of this in motion, he was asked, so what do people need to go into the future? And he says, figuring out what questions to ask. It's not the answers, it's the figuring out the right questions that we need to be asking. And we need to ask it in terms of what does it mean to be that human. So the 4 competencies that we're talking about today is around becoming more fully human and making our contribution so it's not taken over by AI or any other technology that comes along, and we're pretty soon not serving ourselves.
Right.
So this is the era of the human as far as we're concerned. They talk about the era of
While
AI.
we're still human, we might as well claim it.
Yeah, we're already here.
We're not totally cyborgs just yet. So yeah, and I joke about that, but so much of our autonomy and agency is being augmented, and it's automatic now that we do. This is a great moment to step back.
Yes.
And especially if there's a lot of concern and also excitement too about in this new era, the way things are shifting in terms of how businesses are being run and developed and how they integrate with society. This is a great time to be alive and to say, okay, this is what it means to be human right now. And this is what it means as a company to bring out our humanity as well.
Yes, and so we've identified, you and I, as we've started developing all this, is there 4 major competencies that we believe they're going to be driving our future, and we need to rise to these competencies. And competencies are they're beyond skill sets, they're beyond abilities and capabilities. They're really deep proficiencies that allow us to do things in multiple ways. Whatever we're doing, at the baseline, serving under all this is a foundation of competency that we're trying to develop.
And you can interchange and plug in different skill sets into that competency.
Right.
Right.
But in order to do your job, whatever it can be, it could be marketing, accounting, or acting, or making movies, or whatever else. Beneath that is a level of competency as a human being. And we identified 4 of them that we think are incredibly important. One is, of course, creative innovation. It's not just innovation, which is utilitarian and so forth, but it's creative innovation. The second one is storytelling and why that's so important. And the third one is zoom out, zoom in, and handling the complexity of that zooming out, zooming in. And the last one is bringing out the full potential of humans, the full potential of our organizations. So those are the 4 major competencies. So let's dive into each one of them for just a minute to give an overview. And in subsequent videos, we will talk about each one of these in depth. But so we're just going to cover the overview of each one of these at this point.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first one is creative innovation.
Right.
And I came from innovation, and I just made a little joke kind of teasing a lot of the business world right now, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but is how many businesses, how many websites I look at and they say the core of our business is innovation, right? And all of them. And innovation is so important, and it is, but but innovation does have a purpose, and that is to be useful, right? It has to have a utilitarian quality to it, right?
Right.
And but when you put creative next to it, what is the purpose of creativity? Creativity is originality, and it's soulful.
And it's something, when you're in creativity, you and I are both artists, and we can say, okay, from the art standpoint, there's creativity. In our business, we're creative, and people often call us for our creativity, not just that we can do strategies and brands and things like this. And they call us in because they have a sticky problem, a wicked question, and they say, we need somebody who's really creative here. So what that means is when you go into your creativity as a human being, you're actually it's like falling in love. It's immersive, it's deep, it brings out your head, heart, and belly. It brings out all these pieces to who you are as you start to do your craft or your work or whatever else, if you're really creative in it. And it's not something that's just, how do I make something work? It's, how do I create something that needs to come into being?
Yeah, and when I worked in innovation, one of the things is that I would push myself and even other people is that, you know, if it doesn't open up your perspective, if it doesn't change the way you see the world and how you behave in the world, and ultimately changes reality, then it's not really innovation, it's an improvement. And there's nothing wrong with improvements or adjustments,
right,
for, you know, for the to make life easier, to better, whatever. But you know, if you really want to talk about innovation, you're actually providing something really soulful for the evolution of humanity.
That's right. It's bringing out the soulful element inside of us and the spirit within us. The soul is the deeper stuff, as the Buddhists will talk about. It's that deep stuff in the mud from which the spirit grows. That's the lotus. It's the idea that there's a deepness to us, but there's also this inspirational part that comes out, and so we'll get into more details on this. But there's a lot to, just like love, you take risks, and so to be creative innovation, it has to be some risk taking in this. You're taking a risk when you do this, and they found that kindergartners are much better at creative problem solving than MBA students, CEOs, lawyers, teachers. They actually are better at it because they just immerse themselves in it.
Yeah, that sandbox becomes an entire, you know, kingdom for cowboys and Indians and dragons and knights and whatever, and they are all playing these roles, and they just get into it.
So that's creative innovation. We think that is the one that is we have to be really good at. That's one of the four. The second one is storytelling. Now, you know a lot about storytelling. It has to be powerful in transformation and sets emotions moving. It has to set emotions going. It's not just data reporting and statistics and facts and just
or even just like we've all seen, you know, storytelling is a big buzzword in the business world in general, and we've all seen, you know, here are some tips and tricks for how to tell a great story using oration skills and working the room and preparing your slides, and here's a narrative arc that you can kind of follow and plug in your information. Oh, it's in some ways it should be so much more simple than that. It's really like, what is so deeply personal in your life that matters to you, and just speaking from the heart and letting that be just speaking from the heart is relatable unto itself.
And what we're finding is it's not just us observing this. It's popping up everywhere, and people are talking about storytelling, but they're misunderstanding some elements of what really storytelling. We're going to get into that in a subsequent video. But Scott Galway, he's a marketing professor at NYU. He was asked that. He says, what for him, what is the one thing that kids need to succeed in the future? And he says storytelling. Because if you can't put it together into a coherent story, you're not going to convince others. And your book, the book that you co-created with at Free Range, when you're at Free Range, one of our clients, the book it's called Winning the Story Wars. And it's the truth. You win by story. That's what wins, and that's what loses. We see that in politics. We can go through all the politics things of why certain people are elected and some people are not. Well, very often it's the storytelling that's being done.
And we have to recognize that storytelling isn't like a nice add-on to your business or something like an extracurricular activity. It's if you really want to just make it real simple, powerful stories influence decision making.
Yes, and that decision making is with investors. People are going to put up money for your thing. They're with your customers, with your own company.
Your market being loyal to you. I mean,
the public. So every audience needs to hear this story, and it has its own way of hearing that story, and so you have to shape that story.
And it creates context for the complexity. It helps contain some of the things that are really hard to hold all together. So we use the power of analogy, but when you make it personal, it's just,
And when people get
makes it
overwhelmed
relatable.
with too much data and too much statistics and too much information and so forth, that's the time to step back and look at it and say, what's the real story behind all this? The story that provides meaning, as we talked about before. It's what is the meaning of things that drive everything. People are looking for deeper meaning in their stories, not just reporting. So this is the second important part to all this. Now, before we talk about the other two, just a thought is that, so why is this so damn important right now? Because people are confused. The future is very confusing. Our society is in disarray. Things are collapsing. Lots of other ain't it awfuls that come along. But there's also some amazing stuff that's coming out, and it's coming toward us, and it's beautiful, and it's going to be valuable to us. But we've got to know what is worthwhile. And so people need to prepare for this. So they need to have the competencies to handle this stuff. And that's why creative innovation and storytelling, zooming out, zooming in, and developing the full potential of things is the important basis for all this. So your people need it, they need it to go into the future, your organizations need it, you need to discover new pathways for flow and fun and personal creativity and personal agency. You need to bring out the potential of your team and strengthen your culture. So that's why we think going back and stepping back and really understanding what are the competencies that are going to drive our future. And we think they're human competencies.
They're absolutely human competencies, yeah.
So that brings us to the third major competency, which is zooming out and zooming in. And this is one that Steve Jobs called the number one sign of intelligence. Number one sign of intelligence is the ability to zoom in, take in the whole system, look at the whole picture, stand on the mountain, and then zoom in to what can I do with this? And how can this be valuable? And so it's this broader out and narrower in that allows you to put it into motion. And it takes intuitive, bold imagination to land on that perch. You have to be pretty imaginative to stand up above things and really see what's going on and put it all together in a coherent way that you can convey this. And
it's something that can be enhanced and developed over time and strengthened over time, just like storytelling or anything. But we see this in sports all the time where, like Stephen Curry, he's aware of the guy right in front of him and where the ball is in his hands and not get the ball stolen. But he's also knowing where this other player is moving from over there, the whole play at hand. I mean, he's going back and forth, taking in the entire playing field. And so this is a really powerful skill set, and it's not skill set, but a competency, excuse me, to be able to move back and forth nimbly.
And that's what you always see with sports figures. They're a great analogy because the best ones take in the whole field and yet can get very down into the zoom in to make the play.
And it is the powers of 10 that you have to toggle. I think great leaders do that all the time. They can get right in the weeds with like the financial reports, and then they can step way back and just look at like, what is the impact and how are people responding, and what is the zeitgeist of the times that's really influencing my business model right now.
Yeah, 10 squared, 10 to the third power to the fourth power. It's continually going out so you can take in more and more and understand it. It also, the higher your perspective, the greater the sense of peace. And so one of the great things you do, and as you know, when things get too challenging and too difficult for us, is to look out at the world out here. Open up to the ocean and see the sky, see the trees. Opening that gives you peace. It's a way of feeding your soul that allows you to hold all the things that are coming at you. And so I think this is why zooming out and zooming in is critical. And what that requires, though, also is when you're doing that, you've got to be able to handle that complexity. This is a complex world we live in. We're complex. Every one of us is a complex system. We are not linear systems. We're all complex systems. So you want to be able to take that all in. So there's three elements to complexity, isn't it? To handling complexity. The first one is create a container. Hold this bigger story. So what is this bigger story telling us? And see it, envision it, use your imagination, pull it together, because you can't hold all the data, but you can hold the story.
Right.
And so that create a container. Second part, connect things. Connect nodes to nodes to nodes to nodes to nodes, and see where those connectors can actually benefit each of the part of that network. So that's the network of advantage that you create by connecting things. And the third level of complexity is to let it flow. You can't manhandle complexity. It's too complex to handle. Right now we have all sorts of modeling tools with AI and so forth, with weather and seismic activity. None of that is sophisticated enough, and it's very unlikely it ever will be. We approximate, we try to get close, but we could never get there.
And I think creative innovation plugs in really kind of neatly also with flow as well. I mean, there's a process, there's a lot of different versions of process, and we have different journeys and maps of process for creative innovation. But creative innovation, like when you're really creative, you actually enter kind of a flow state. And so there is this really responsive nimbleness and hyper awareness that's almost automatic, right?
Yeah.
And so you're constantly adjusting things. If you're a painter or a sculptor, you're constantly maneuvering and finding, the material is informing you just as much as you're informing the material, and then there might be other forces at play that's also informing your decision making, right? And so that flow part of the thing is like, how do you get into a flow state? It's not just curl up in the lotus position and do om, right? It's actually sometimes the best way to get into a flow state is to get into a creative state.
Yeah, get out materials, get kinesthetic, start moving, start changing things, and you all of a sudden start. The whole body, the whole mind has to work together. It's not just the brain; it's the mind, the larger mind, as well as the heart and the passion of it, as well as the body. So that's what's going to get us into the flow state. So all these four work together. They all interrelate, which brings us to the fourth one, which is potential development. Why is that so important? Because right now, one of our observations is more and more I see that people are more afraid of their own power than they are of their shortcomings. They're more afraid of their own power than they are of their shortcomings. And as a poet David White called it, he says, they're afraid to live on a grander scale. We need to learn as a human beings to live on a grander scale. We're more than our job and our title and da. Of course we are, but we need to learn to live on that larger scale and discover that. I think one of the things you see is in the human potential of everything is letting people be strange. Letting people be a little weird, because it's our uniqueness, our weirdness, that is different from any other human being on this planet. And the more we can see the potential of people, not just how you can fulfill this job and this role and this hitting your numbers, it's how do you bring out that fullness of the human? And that's large. It's very large. And the more we open it up, the more we see the largeness of it all.
And it's really hard to just put in a policy within your organization for potential and development, right? Like you can say, oh, well, we allocate, $500 per employee a year or a month or whatever to go take an extracurricular course somewhere. But we don't, we do that because we hope that it comes back into the company somehow. But really, I think when you really care about potential, what you really are doing is you're establishing a network of support for somebody, because exploring your potential is a messy process. It's scary. You're going to be trying things out that you've never tried before. I mean, if you have to play with the unfamiliar if you're going to really evolve as a human being or as an organization, right? So you need to have some of these support systems and conditions in place for potential to even grow.
And the leaders, that's part of their role, is to help build those conditions. And if they're not doing that, if they're not doing their job. When I was in corporate America, VP of this and that, one of the things that I watched is they had full potential, high potential people. They identified high potential, some percentage, 5% or whatever else, there were high potential people that would be promoted and so forth. And I thought, that's really odd. I think all people have a high potential. Why are we just saying these are the only ones? Well, the high potential to do what? Fit in? The
Yeah.
high potential to be conforming to the corporate structure instead of pick the ones that don't fit in. Those are the
Right.
ones that are doing the creative stuff for you.
Yeah.
And see that as high potential, not just the ones that can get promoted to this title and that title, but what are the high potentials within your organization? Bring them into the room. We don't do enough of that.
Yeah, we don't, and so and I also think about it like just like the gym, right? When you have a spotter or a trainer, right? That person isn't lifting the weights for you. That person is providing a couple of services. One is encouragement, right? And saying like, I know you got it in you to give me one more push-up or whatever it is, or
Right.
one more rep, or here, let me hold onto the barbell for you so that like I create a sense of safety, and so that you can catch your breath and I'm here with you. But I think a lot of it is just like we need to be witnessed in our own evolution and development.
Yes, you have to be seen. You have to see the person before you. That's
right.
That's what teachers always are being told. See the student before you. Don't just
Right,
make
and
up
so we can create a whole world of of supporting each other's full potential. If we did that, I mean, what a beautiful scenario that would be. But where companies can really have actually control in that is, to our point earlier, is around setting some of the conditions
Yeah.
and some of the processes. Like, can you in your company create a buddy system that allows people to just be vulnerable and talk about what they really want to do, and try some of these things out?
One of the things that I run into over and over again is we go into companies, they ask us to look at their strategies and say, what do you think of our strategies and so forth. What I often see is their plans for adding another 10% or 15% to whatever they're doing.
Right.
And that's not full potential. What's the full potential, the possibility of this entire enterprise? What kind of business model will be the full potential business model into the future, not what is plus 10%. And so they're not living up to their full potential. And one of the ways you have, part of it is they don't understand where they are in their own life cycle. There's a life cycle to everything. And so it's everything from startups to the go-go stages of really growing and accelerating up the curve, and then there's a kind of a tapering at the top, and then if you haven't reinvented before that, you start to slip down the slippery slopes down to decline. Mm-hmm. And at each one of those points, we know exactly what kind of leadership is needed at that point, what kind of potential needs to get developed within the company to optimize that particular level. And it's not the same for a startup that it is for a company that's in prime, for sure. And if it's over in decline area, it's a whole different thing. You've got to blow it up and redo something radical if it gets over the hump. And so knowing that
Right.
also tells you how you start structuring your high potential. So we'll talk more about that.
Yeah, our plan is we're going to make a video on each competency and really kind of break it down in terms of how it plays out in the world and what it could look like and some of our ideas around that, because this is what we do with our clients, and and it is it should be customizable to each individual and company about how to cultivate this competency.
So in our little book on future shaping and standing out and success in the future, the biggest chapter in here is on core competencies, because it's such a critical element and pivotal element.
It was actually the thing that we played around with as the title for the book, some variation of the title for the book,
Yeah.
because we realized this is such a pillar importance right now, and especially in the times of so much uncertainty and rapid development of things with AI and so on and so forth. So
to wrap that up,
we have the little mantra that we say to ourselves.
it's in the inside.
We say to ourselves, but we also we ask this of our clients, and that is, be bold.
Yeah.
I mean, let yourself, let your personality, let your humanness come out.
Yes.
Act on your dreams. Be curious.
Explore the mystery.
Explore the mystery. Talk to us. Reach out to us. We want to hear from you. And then be kind. Like really, how are we making these conditions beneficial to everybody and ourselves, and gentle, and we're clumsy, and we're supposed to be going into the unfamiliar, and that's
and being kind to me also means sharing.
It's sharing.
You're
Absolutely.
sharing your gifts, you're sharing your insights, you're sharing what you have to offer to the world, and you're sharing their potential. You're sharing a way of nurturing people that you're working with.
You were mentioning, yeah. And just one more thing is that you were saying that one of the things is that we don't ever run out of these competencies. You can't run out.
No.
You can't expel them. Whereas a skill, you might not be able to.
Yeah, the skill will come and go.
Yeah.
The skill sets and the job titles and all that will come and go. But the competencies that you have that underlie all those are going to be absolutely critical. And like you said, that's what Maya Angelou basically said, is you can never run out of creativity, because the more you use, the more creative you are. So,
and we can't run out of boldness, we can't run out of curiosity, and we can't run out of kindness right now.
That's right. So let's be human.
Yes.
All right. Thanks so much. This is good.
Yeah.
Now that you've begun this exploration of the timeless future competencies through our Seaside Chat, we invite you to continue the journey. Consider these questions. In what way do these future competencies resonate with you? What insights do you want to add to the competency conversation? How well do you believe you and your organization are using these competencies to drive your future standout success? And what would have to be true to foster a more robust application of these competencies in your world? We invite you to share your answers and additional thoughts with us and with your colleagues.